Hey, welcome to Playing for Keeps, the show where we take a deep dive into emotional intelligence, sex, love, adult attachment theory, mental health, therapy, and everything in between that creates great relationships. Your host, DJ, is a certified life coach and emotional intelligence practitioner. She's here to be of service to all the listeners interested in love and relationship. Now, here's your host, DJ.
Good evening, everyone. This is your girl DJ with Playing for Keeps podcast. I hope that everyone is doing well during these trying times. Today, I have Jenn. She is on a mission to educate the world about the unique, brilliant, often misunderstood, small subsection of the population known as Highly Sensitive Extrovert Women. The acronym is HSP-Es, if you want to look that up. She has a strong background in applied psychology. Jenn has been helping people use the power of their minds to overcome challenges since 2008. She now focuses on helping HSP-E women thrive in a world that currently doesn't quite understand them. So today she is here to speak on dating tips for highly sensitive women and the importance of overcoming their shadow side. Hey, Jenn, how are you this evening?
Hey, DJ, I'm really good. Thank you for having me.
Most definitely. Or good morning to you. Where are you in the world today?
I'm in Perth, Western Australia. So it's, first thing in the morning.
Wow. Well, thank you again for coming on early in the morning.
Thank you for having me. And luckily it's not too early. The time difference isn't too challenging. So that's good.
No. It's all good and dandy. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, the short version of the story is, I suppose, about 6 or 7 years ago, I left my corporate career due to some family tragedy, which I won't go into now, but basically it caused me to reassess my life. And I kind of went, you know what, I'm enjoying my job, but I don't love my life. So I packed up my career, didn't have a job to go to, and I decided it was time to chase my dream to be a singer.
Wow.
So I became a singer in a band. I was the lead singer in a rock band, and I also did acoustic duos as well. So that was so cool, and it was probably the scariest but the best decision I have ever done in my entire life, because you just can't describe the feeling of being on stage and realizing, oh my God, this is me living my dream. It was just so cool.
I almost want to ask you to bust a tune.
Maybe next time.
Okay. All right, I won't catch you off guard.
And so I did that, and it was so amazing. But unfortunately, I then got a chronic illness. I've got ME/CFS, chronic fatigue, and so that obviously singing is quite a physically demanding thing to do. So I wasn't able to keep doing that. So I started to think, okay, well, what can I do that's a little bit more sustainable? And originally I started thinking, well, maybe I can coach women because of my background in psychology. Maybe I can coach women and kind of teach them the importance of not giving up on your dreams and putting yourself first, because I think women have this tendency to look after everyone else around them first.
Definitely.
Before themselves. So that's how I started in the coaching industry. And then a couple of years ago, I discovered this concept or this group of people called highly sensitive persons or highly sensitive people. And interestingly, because I've always known I'm an extrovert, but I've always felt that I didn't quite fit in the world. I wasn't like a true extrovert, and I just felt like a square peg in a round hole, basically. Gotcha. And then when I read about this highly sensitive person concept, it was like the final penny dropped in terms of understanding me and figuring out, oh, that's why I am like I am. That's why I've had these challenges in life. That's why I continue to have these challenges. And what I found really interesting was the majority of highly sensitive people, so they make up about 15 to 20% of the population. And of those 15 to 20%, 70% of them are introverts. So that means that to be a highly sensitive extrovert, I'm only one of about 6% of the population.
Wow.
So that kind of, again, was like, wow, okay, no wonder I've struggled to find people like me. I've struggled to find my tribe. And so I thought, well, that's perfect as a focus for my coaching. And so I kind of got so passionate about helping other highly sensitive extrovert women. Okay. And that's now what I focus on. And I absolutely love it, because I believe that they're just amazing souls who have so much to offer the world. And that's why I'm kind of out here trying to educate the world about how amazing they are. So
got you. So why don't you tell us like the characteristics of someone with HSP?
Okay, so it's first of all, it's something that you're born with, so you can't kind of become a HSP. You either are or you're not when you're born. Wow. So it's a trait. And there's 4 criteria that make up highly sensitive people, and it's DOES, does, and that stands for depth of processing. So we process everything very deeply. We need a lot of time to process stuff, and our processor is kind of on overdrive most of the time. And because of that, we have a tendency to become overstimulated, which is the O. So a lot of highly sensitives struggle with big crowds, big noises. Being too busy can get us to move into that sense of overwhelm, and then we get irritable at that point. And the E is emotional responsiveness or empathy. So highly sensitives are very empathetic, so they really understand, they can put themselves in other people's shoes really well and totally get why someone's upset. And the emotional responsiveness is all about kind of our emotions are quite magnified. So when we're happy and we're excited, we can be, well, the extroverts definitely can be quite overwhelming for other people. And but then also the lows are quite, not bad, but it's just a little bit more kind of ups and downs, a little bit more extreme than most people. And then the S is sensitive to subtleties. So that's where we can kind of walk in a room and we can pick up if there's any kind of tension, if there's so-and-so is not talking to so-and-so, we can almost we can just sense it because we're very highly tuned.
Vigilant.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So that's the DOES, DOES, and that's for all highly sensitives. And then obviously the extroverts who are obviously not very many of them, it's almost like, I say we're walking contradictions. Okay. Because the extrovert side needs people, because that's where extroverts get their energy from their external environment. But because we're highly sensitive, we then finding that balance is really quite difficult, because we kind of need to do the whole peopling thing, but then we go, oh my God, this is too much. I need time to go and process everything and recharge.
Recharge, kind of like what I was telling you, how I feel like I'm in the middle, because one minute I feel like I need, that connection with people, but then the next minute I need that time to myself to kind of recharge, whether it's reading a book or something. Okay, so
right, and just on that, I think what you raised a really good point, because a lot of highly sensitive extroverts sometimes feel like they're introverts, and that's exactly why, because it's our highly sensitive side kind of drawing us down the continuum closer to an introvert.
And that's why I felt like I was just a straight introvert, because I could be disconnected from people for months, and be totally fine. And then I'll pop up like, hey, how you doing? And then they're like, well, I ain't heard from you in months. And it's just kind of like, well, no.
I think you've probably been coping quite well with this global crisis too, because most of my ladies have actually kind of gone, you know what, this isn't that much different to our normal life.
We can honestly
by ourselves. And it's kind of nice sometimes to have that. Like, you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah, you kind of could just relax, and recharge and think of your next steps, your next move while this is going on. At least that's how I'm kind of looking at it and what I'm trying to do. So let me ask you this: how do you educate women to find that balance? Like you said, they're extroverted, but then at the same time, they kind of go down that rabbit hole of being introverted because they need to recharge. They need that energy because at the same time, sometimes being disconnected from people for long periods of time isn't good, just depending on what they're doing and what they have going on. So what do you do to help with that?
Well, I think the first step is to just almost be respectful of the two different parts of yourself. So recognize that it's, because I feel like a lot of highly sensitive extroverts feel guilty about disconnecting and about having that time alone. Right. So I think it's about just saying it's okay. It's self-acceptance and self-awareness. So it's about going, okay, well, this is just how I need to live to feel okay, is I need to find that balance. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is just getting them to, I've got this client who one of her biggest challenges is fighting against this almost ingrained thing that society have put on us, is that we have to be productive every minute of every day.
Right.
And that's causing problems for her because she's a highly sensitive extrovert. So she looks back on her day and she goes, oh, well, I spent like 2 hours laying in the hammock having a daydream, and she feels guilty about that, and she feels like she's being lazy. And so one of the things I'm helping her see is to adjust her expectations. So to recognize that that time out is something that she requires to process what's been going on, to recharge her batteries. So the big thing is really just accepting and coming to terms with, this is how we need to live our life, and that's okay. We don't have to fall into line with what society tells us.
Yeah, and that's a good thing you're saying that, because even through this pandemic, like, you know, on my Facebook, my social media, you see a lot of people saying, me and my friend was just having this conversation because she's seeing the same thing on like Instagram and stuff. If you haven't picked up a new skill during this pandemic and you don't come out making all this money, then you're lazy and you ain't doing nothing. And it's just kind of like, maybe this is a time for people to just kind of, like you said, recharge. If they want to recharge, if you want to have a new skill, then that's great. I commend you. That's great. But if you want to relax, I feel like if you can and you're allowed to, and you're not cutting into your expenses, then why not relax, recharge, and process what's going on with your life.
Yeah.
So
I think, because that's one of my big frustrations, is how some of society's expectations on us are actually not helpful, and they're not even healthy, a lot of them. It's not, I mean, the burnout in today's society is probably higher than it has ever been. So we're obviously doing something wrong. And so part of what I'm trying to do is just almost encourage women to deliberately buck the trend and go, no, I'm not going to do that. I refuse to see being busy as a status symbol, because I think that's what it has become. If you're not busy and you don't have anything to do, there's something wrong with you, or you're lazy, or you're not as successful as somebody who, oh, I'm busy. And that's one of my bugbears. I can't handle it. I'm like, it should be the opposite. You're so successful that you don't have to work.
You don't have to be so busy and work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, because you're letting your brain work for you.
Exactly.
You know, I think that's a conditioning, though, that society has put on us to keep us down. But that's another topic for another day. Let me ask you this. So, being a woman with HSP, I'm sure it can be difficult to date. Could you give us examples of how it could be difficult to date, and then like ways to move past that?
Yep. Okay. Well, first of all, I just have to clarify something, because I feel I need to, just in the way people describe us. Okay. So you said a woman with HSP, which kind of sounds like a disorder. You know what I mean? Like it's a person with autism. So I like to call us HSP-E women. So just just a small tweak there, but it's just something that I'm passionate about, educating people that we're awesome. And we don't want to kind of put HSP out there as being something wrong.
Right.
So just wanted to, clarify that.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay, no worries. All right, so back to your question. So dating can be difficult for HSPs in general, but HSP-E women is what my focus is. And one of the reasons is because a classic issue they have is it's like they're a homing beacon for narcissists and people who take advantage. And the reason for that is because our sensitivity can sometimes be seen as a weakness.
Right.
And also, a lot of HSPs struggle with having healthy boundaries. So they sometimes in relationships, they can give in too easily, be easily defeated, and their boundaries kind of become whatever the other person's boundaries are. And that's obviously a very unhealthy position to be in general, but you can also see why narcissists and other people who don't have the best of intentions are almost drawn to us.
Yes, and that's something that I've also have struggled with in the past, and why I'm actually on the journey that I am on as well, because I attracted narcissistic people, or just people who didn't have the best intentions as well. And that was because me personally, I would go into relationships totally forgetting that I was looking for a suitable person too. I was just too busy trying to be that perfect person. And in reality, I was really sabotaging myself and ultimately the relationship, because at the end of the day, a person always respects the person who sets boundaries more than the person who always says yes. And that's a hard lesson that I had to learn. I think I talk about this in every other podcast that I have, because it's something that I know I struggle with, and I know that a lot of other people struggle with. They don't set healthy boundaries. And like I would always say, I think with HSP women as well, what I tended to do was make my partner's identity my own identity, in a way, you know what I'm saying? So I definitely can relate. And I know on that standpoint that I had difficulties with dating and with that aspect too. And what ways do you help women set their boundaries and get in the right direction as far as dating and meeting the right person?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, what you're saying is so common amongst HSP-E women, and just women in general, I think.
Yeah.
It's like, I think boundaries should be taught at school, because it's something that's missing in so many women. So one of the things I do is I run a boundaries challenge, basically. So I have this 5-day free boundaries challenge that I run in my private Facebook group. And the women who've done it, they just rave about it, because they think, like, it's quite simple when you get to know it, but actually putting it into practice is obviously where you get the benefit from it. And so that's one thing that I do to help women, is I run the challenge, and that helps them kind of work. I teach them the process, basically, because so many people talk about boundaries. And it's one of those words, I think, that gets thrown around all the time on the assumption that everybody knows what it is and how to do it. Whereas I think it's one of those things that most people don't know how to.
They don't know. I think it's just like you said, it's a common word that's thrown around, but when you actually have to apply it in your real life, it's just it's foreign. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you're somebody who always says yes. How do you tell somebody no? Exactly. So yeah, you're right.
And I think that's why they love the challenge so much, the boundaries challenge, is because I break it down, I make it simple, and I teach them how to do it instead of just telling them you need healthy boundaries, which so many people say that, and as we've just realized, that doesn't work, because you need to teach people how to do it. And then what I also do is, that's something that I work on a lot with my ladies in coaching. So the challenge is obviously just an introduction. They can work on boundaries with one particular relationship, but then putting it into practice, quite often they need a little bit more support, because obviously the minute you bring in somebody else into a scenario, there's kind of kickback, there's like stuff that happens, and this
Right.
person doesn't like it, because that's the big challenge with boundaries, is it's like there's a saying out there, the only people who love the fact that you don't have boundaries are the ones that are benefiting from it. So
Right.
they're the ones that are taking advantage of you. They're also the ones who don't like it when you start putting boundaries in place, because they've gotten used to things being a particular way. And if you start putting boundaries and standing up for yourself, then you get a reaction from that other person. And so that's where the coaching can be helpful, is helping them deal with that and standing strong, because the worst thing you can do is put a boundary in place and then let it get knocked over at the first sign of difficulty, because then you've essentially taught that person that your boundaries mean nothing. Because we, as humans, we educate people how they can treat us through our boundaries and our actions. So if we put a boundary in place and we just let that person knock it over and there's no consequences, then we've just given them a lesson that our boundaries mean nothing.
They mean nothing, and they'll be able to just continue to walk all over them and walk all over you. So yeah.
So I think it's one of those things that the process is simple. Implementation is a little more challenging, and you probably need a bit of coaching to help you through it, but it is probably the one area in your life that can make probably the most significant difference, because even through the process of putting the boundaries in place, you also start to build on your own self-worth as well, because part of the process I take them through is you deserve to be treated well. Right. You are enough as you are. You don't need to be different. You don't need to say yes all the time. So part of it is building themselves up so they can feel strong to have those boundaries in place. And I find that so rewarding to just see them kind of just blossom. It's so cool to watch.
That's awesome. Okay. So let me ask you this. It's a little more of a personal question. So as far as your own journey, did you have to learn your own lessons within relationships to get to the right person or to get to where you are today?
Definitely. And I think my main issue was I was a highly sensitive person and I didn't realize it. So I had to find my own self-worth and I had to boost my self-esteem. And I think one of the things that I think applies across the board to every single human being on this planet is, until you are happy within yourself and by yourself, you are never going to be truly happy with another person. Because I think so many people, and Hollywood movies probably don't help this, because they talk about soulmates and there's that saying, you complete me, and there's the prince that comes in and rescues the woman and all of that. So I think that's not helpful at all.
That's what that really messed my brain up for the longest. Like, no, Hollywood movies and these cartoons now, even, they do not help at all. They don't help. They don't teach being happy with yourself first and knowing yourself first before you get with somebody, because then you'll know at the end of the day that person is just adding to you. You're not looking for this person to make you happy, and that person's not looking for you to be happy. That's codependency, and it's not good. And
I think that's the lesson that I knew that early on, because I studied psychology. My dad's a psychologist, so I had a very kind of stable, healthy upbringing. My issue was the whole HSP stuff, and I didn't quite know. I always felt like there was something wrong with me, but it's definitely something that I am very passionate about, in terms of, as you say, you look for somebody to add to your life as opposed to complete your life, because an ideal relationship is where you grow together and you boost each other up. Right. You don't kind of bring each other up to normal. That's not the purpose of the relationship. You need to do that work yourself in order to attract the right person, because that's the other difference, is and this is what I noticed. So my big turning point was when I became the singer. So as soon as I decided to chase my dreams, all of a sudden it was just about me pursuing what I loved, me doing what I loved. It was about me, and I was filling my cup first, and I was making myself happy. And to me, that was the turning point, because I was obviously giving off different vibes as well, because I was just doing my thing. I wasn't out there looking for anything. I was just like, this is me, I'm loving life. And the next minute, who I believe is my Mr. Right, came into my life. And the interesting thing is, he probably wouldn't have noticed me or approached me if I was not doing what I was doing, in terms of just living my life, happy where I was at. Okay. That is the crux. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to do the work to get to that point.
So that was my next question I was going to ask you. So you took a big leap, like you left your career and everything and you followed your dreams. What tips would you give somebody to do on a smaller scale, just in case they're not willing to do that, to find themselves and to be happy? Like, what tips would you give?
Okay. So, one of the easiest things to do, and one of the kind of most obvious things, is when you break up from someone in a relationship, you got to learn the lessons from that relationship. So there are reasons that relationship failed, and it's not all one person's fault, because even if it is like a narcissist and you still play a part in allowing that relationship to continue. So the end of a relationship is never down to just one person. So both parties have some really valuable lessons to learn. And I think that's probably the easiest point at which to start that personal growth is look back at that relationship, take the time to learn the lessons, and being by yourself again, which is a lot of people don't want to handle that. Yeah, it's so uncomfortable for them, but I'm sorry, people, it's a necessary thing. Like, if you can't handle being by yourself, you're not going to be able to attract the right person into your life. You're going to come across as somebody who's needy and desperate and can't handle being alone. And to me, if you can't handle being in your own space alone, there's some issues going on that need intervention. Like if you can't be physically by yourself in your own space, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And it's not to say it can't be done, but it's just a big red flag that perhaps you do need to do some work. And it doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately. And that's the other thing that people get frustrated with. They want to just meet Mr. Right tomorrow and live happily ever after. If you want to find the right Mr. Right for you, then you've got to do the work.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but
that's the thing. You want to find Mr. Right, but why? Why do you want to find? Is it to add to you, or is it because you feel like this man is going to ultimately make you happy? That's another thing too that people need to really think and dissect. And I know I didn't understand that for the longest. Like I used to hear that, like, no, a person should add to you. They shouldn't make you happy. And it's kind of like, what do you mean they shouldn't make you happy? Then why be in a relationship? I didn't fully understand that for the longest. I think it finally clicked like last year, literally. So
I think another way to look at it is that's a lot of pressure to put on somebody to expect them to make you happy. Like, even if you just look at it from that perspective, like, how on earth is that supposed to work? Because that's a lot of pressure on that person's shoulders.
It is a lot. I think the reason why I couldn't understand it though was because in the past I used to try to be that person. I wanted to make my partner, my mate, happy. So I did everything I felt I needed to do in my power to make them happy. And I expected the person to turn around and do the same thing. But I noticed with me though, I also didn't want to look needy, so I didn't speak on my needs either. That was another issue that I had. I didn't want to look needy, so I didn't speak on my needs. Or if, they felt like I needed something and they would ask, I would be like, no, I'm okay, because I wanted to look strong and independent. But at the end of the day, I really was sabotaging my relationship in other ways too. So I've had to go through a lot of learning curves, and I'm still going through a lot of learning curves. That's why I'm by myself now, as I'm trying to figure it out. And so when it's time for me to enter into another relationship, I'm more equipped So,
yeah, and that's brilliant. And I think that's such an amazing thing that you're doing for yourself and for your future partners. They will thank you as well. And I think you're to be commended for that, because it is a brave thing to do, to tackle it alone, accept that there are things you can do to improve yourself, because that's the first step, is recognizing, I mean, not that anybody thinks they're perfect, but recognizing that there are things that we do to sabotage or to make the relationship not work. We've got to own that and accept that first, and then become aware of exactly what it is. So self-awareness is another first step, is what am I doing to contribute to this situation or to this challenge or to this breakup. It's owning our own stuff, really.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. What projects are you working on right now? Like, what programs do you have and all of that stuff?
Okay, so the main thing that I would love to do is to have any HSP extrovert women out there. I'd love to have you come and join my group, because we've got this amazing group of women who, just every time I think about them, my heart just lights up, because they're so amazing. They're all in there supporting each other and sharing their challenges. And one of the things that they all say is how it feels like they've kind of come home when they join the group. Because to be feeling like there's something wrong with you or you don't quite fit your whole life, which most HSPE women feel because we're so unique, there's not many of us. They say that when they meet these other HSPE women, it's like coming home, because it's like you already know each other, because everybody just gets you and they understand you, and somebody will share a challenge in the group and all the ladies will go, oh, yep, been there, yep. And they totally understand everything. So that's kind of my main project, is trying to get more HSPE women into that group so that they can feel supported. And then from that group is where the Boundaries Challenge is running. So I'd run that a couple of times a year. And then I also have coaching that people can do with me as well, so one-on-one coaching. But the best way to kind of get access to me is definitely in the group, for sure.
Okay.
I don't know if we can share the group link.
So we're going to share the group link, and then and also your website and all of that stuff in the show notes. And then I'm going to have you go over your website and stuff as well in the last part of the episode. I want to ask you a couple of questions. So first question, what's your favorite romantic movie?
Oh, geez. That's a tough one. I always used to love Pretty Woman.
Okay.
And Love Actually tends to be that's one that sticks in my mind.
I've never seen that one.
You haven't seen Love Actually? Oh, goodness.
No, I haven't.
You got to watch it then. I think it's got it's Hugh Grant, and I can't remember who the leading lady is, but yeah, it's pretty cool. I think it's like a Christmas themed one. They normally show it around Christmas time.
I'm gonna look it up. Okay. And then the last question, do you remember where you got your first kiss at?
Oh, I don't. That's tough. I'm getting on a bit now. I can remember that far back. I don't remember my first kiss, but I definitely remember my first boyfriend. Okay. I was 12 and he was a little rat bag, to be honest. And funnily enough that you ask this, is the other day I was actually going through, I've got some memory boxes where I just chuck all my old stuff in. Mm-hmm. And I was going through my memory box because I'm trying to turn them into like photo books instead, so they don't take up as much space.
Okay.
And I came across this little brown paper bag that was from school when I was 12, and it was called a warm fuzzy bag. So the teachers actually said to us, you put warm fuzzies in other people's bags. So you could do it anonymously, or you could just say, oh, I like your hair, DJ, it looks great today. And you just put the little note, the little warm fuzzy in the bag. And I found my bag from when I was 12, and there were some really cute notes in there. There are also some quite naughty notes from my boyfriend. And I remember reading them going, and how does he even know that stuff at that age? Like, I was quite So yeah, that's probably the best thing I remember from that.
That's a good story. Thank you for that. Okay, so now, so you talked about your Facebook group. Could you go ahead and tell us your Facebook group and then tell us your website as well?
Yeah, sure. So the Facebook group is a bit of a mouthful. It's Bright Sparks, Empathetic Extrovert Warrior Women. And my website is pretty simple. It's just jennturnham.com. And yeah, I think that's all you need.
Okay. Well, I will also have that in the show notes. I want to thank you for coming on this evening/morning in Australia.
Well, thank you so much for having me, DJ. It's been so lovely to chat to you. And I love doing this sort of thing and just this is what I love about technology. You get to chat with people literally all over the world.
Over the world. Yes, it was lovely chatting with you too. And I want to thank all of the listeners for tuning in today. And until next time.
Thank you for tuning in to today's show. If you liked this podcast, please download and subscribe. If there's anything you would like to talk about in regards to relationships or would like to be a guest on the show to speak on relationships or get advice, you can always connect via social media at Playing for Keeps or email DJ at info@p4kdating.com. Thank you for tuning in and bye for now.